Welcome to episode 5 of The Accursed. This is a story you are going to want to listen to from the beginning. If you're just jumping in now, I suggest going back to episode 1 and starting there. This podcast shares some scares and frights. It also delves into adult themes. Specific content warnings are in the show notes of each episode. Please check them so that you can honor yourself and your boundaries. Today is a two-story day. This first one disturbed me in a big way. Not so much for its ghostiness, though that did not help, but more because of the way it was written. There's an unhinged quality that gives me the creeps. This story showed up probably about a month into someone leaving them for me. Before I was born, we lived in a stone house at the end of a lane. I remember the day we arrived. Mother stood at the threshold, a storm against her back. She froze, a shiver of terror racing up her spine, stopping her from entering, but Father yelled to her that she would catch her death if she didn't come in and shut the door. So she did, brushing aside that fear that had no name. Mama took to the bedroom almost immediately, retreating into that dark cave. Father just figured it was due to her being with child and let it be. I remember she would sit on her bed and brush her hair over and over for hours, it seemed. She had long, straight blonde hair in those days. At night, she would braid it so that each morning she could take it down and let the waves cascade over her shoulders. Mama was vain even then. You may think that cruel to say, but remember, it was her who went to see that charlatan, that psychic, and when he put his hand on her thigh and good-naturedly commented that her soon-to-be-born daughter will somehow even be more beautiful than she, Mama went into a depression. She stopped coming out of that bedroom at all. Father would bring her breakfast before work and leave a tray at the door around supper time. It didn't matter. Mama barely ate. She would just sit on the bed and talk to the shadow. And she thought I wouldn't remember. But I do. I remember, Mama. I remember that shadow. Even after I came to flesh, I still remember. The shadow used to talk to me too. Do you know that, Mama? You weren't special. You were just there. When you would be asleep, the shadow would creep to the bed and place its hands on your belly, getting rounder with each day. But he didn't want you. No. He wanted me. Me. He would tell me stories of doors in the woods, of stairs to the fire, of a choice we all must make. Father was worried for you. He would hear your whispers, no matter how you tried to hide them. He watched your hair grow greasy. He watched you as you refused food, letting the skin drip from your bones. He would try. He did. He tried to make you eat, tried to make you leave the house to get away from that shadow, but you refused. You wouldn't budge even as he pleaded for you to think of the baby. You didn't care much for me then either. But I know, Mama. It's not even your fault, not really. I know what that shadow would whisper to you. I know what he would say. That the only way was to kill him. Kill Father. And that if you didn't, you'd be haunted. Father would never let you go. He'd hunt you, close the doors on all your dreams, and make you the little lady of his house. Shut you up in here with kids clinging to your breasts, sucking you dry. You fought it at first, didn't you? Maybe not out of your love for Father or anyone really. Maybe just because you didn't want to get your hands dirty or get caught. But in time, that shadow had you believing that you actually might need a light at the end of the tunnel. When the contraction started, you knew you'd never do this again. And he would make you, wouldn't he, Father? He would have had you swollen with child as much as he could get his hands on you. I don't know what you gave him. I'd already crossed into this mortal coil, and in my separateness, I could no longer know you as I once had. I heard him choking, though, through the thin walls of the cottage as I lay in my bassinet. You had made him dinner, poured him his scotch, and as you did, sat across from him, watching, as eating nothing had become your custom. I could hear the shadow, too, laugh through the night, knowing that his work might just be done. Father was coughing still when you came into my bedroom. I remember you standing over me. In an attempt at love, you placed your hand on my belly and felt the breath move through me. I knew at that moment what you thought, how you wondered if you could, but Mama, I wasn't scared. Even then, I knew you were too weak. Father's coughing became wet and desperate. I heard him stand, bang against the table, and then drop. All was quiet. Say what you want to all your little friends, but I know. I was there. I remember Father never laid a hand on you. You can spin that sob story to Aunt Grace or anyone else you please. A woman must take what's hers, a lesson learned if ever there was one, but I know what you did. I know it all. More, in fact, because I know what happened to that shadow when you finally set it free. After I got this story, I did call the police. I wasn't sure if I should bother, but I figured just in case. Plus, I have watched way too many crime-fighting procedurals and thought maybe this could ring a bell to a long-buried cold case or something. The man I talked to had no idea what to do with me. He basically said that this was probably just a prank and I shouldn't worry. I'm sure he got a good laugh when we hung up. About 3 months later, I got a call asking me to bring the letter to the station. I made a copy and brought them the original. They didn't ask to see any of the other letters, though I did mention their existence. I followed up a few weeks later, but was told that they couldn't tell me anything. I imagine that it's gone in a file, never to be seen again, if it even made it that far. This story has definitely colored how I think of Hazel's mother, and honestly, Hazel too. The stories I got before this were strange and creepy, but this one felt like something more. The person writing it was clearly not of sound mind, and it worries me a little that they know who I am. I think it was back in episode 1, I mentioned that there was someone I had seen on camera coming to the library in the nights before I found a lot of the stories. I doubt this person is Hazel. I've never been able to see the person's face, or I would have knocked on their door already. I can't definitively tell a gender, of course, but they appear female-bodied. Most often, they wear a long, darkish coat and jeans, always a mask and a baseball cap or beanie. Sometimes their long, dark hair is tucked into the hat or is in a ponytail. They look to be about 5'7", thin, lithe frame. Everything about them is fairly nondescript, but they really don't look like they could be a woman in her 80s or older. So that means that someone else is leaving these for me on her behalf, or that this is a very bizarre, almost year-long prank of some kind. There are times that receiving these stories gets under my skin, and getting this one was definitely one of them. Maybe it's my intuition, or maybe I'm just a glutton for punishment, but I do feel this urge to keep reading the stories that arrive. I could easily just leave them in the library, not touch them, or write my own letter, letting them know that I don't want them anymore. But there's a part of me that very much wants to keep going. The same with this podcast. When my friend suggested it, I knew it was a yes, even if I wasn't sure why or if anyone would listen or care. I had a feeling that I needed to do it. I've learned to listen to those kinds of knowings. They don't often steer me wrong. Let's hope that's still true. All right, on to story number 2. This one arrived at the beginning of April. I was actually out of town and came home to find 2 letters waiting for me. Arthur and I drove all the way to Niagara Falls for our honeymoon. Can you just believe it? It seemed like such a grand adventure. I remember staring out the window for hours. The whole world just a blur of dirt and life and trees. I'd been nearly nowhere by then, and the whole world beyond seemed so exciting. We drove as far as Pennsylvania that first night and found a charming roadside inn. Mama had warned me of such places, how they were dirty and that thieves were known to break into the rooms, stealing all you brought with you. I shudder now to think how she formed such opinions. The place looked sweet, clean. The sign said there were TVs in every room. Arthur suggested I stay in the car, but I knew he would turn off the engine to take the keys with him, and there was a damp chill in the air that was threatening to seep right into my bones. Plus, I was excited to hear him refer to me as his wife. The lobby was sparse, but at least it was warm. The woman behind the desk gave me a peculiar look as we walked in. She talked to Arthur, but kept her eyes on me. I felt like she was looking right into me, into my very center, and I wanted to crawl up in a ball and make her stop. I looked down, as if I needed to admire my ring rather than stop feeling her stare burrow through the well where I placed all the screams. Arthur unloaded our baggage and decided to fill up the car while the service station was still open. I waited behind in the room, feigning a slight headache to get out of going. I wanted a few moments to myself to calm my nerves. I unpacked the valise even though we were set to leave first thing in the morning. When there was a knock on the door, I thought it would be Arthur, having returned already. I brightened my face and answered, ready to tell him that I was feeling right as rain and he could take me for dinner. But it was her. I hadn't tried to take her in before. Now I could see how the tiredness in her eyes made her look older than she was. She'd been beautiful once, that I could see. But something pressed down on her, I could tell that too. Meeting her gaze felt like unlocking something I wish would stay shut. Something Arthur shouldn't ever be seeing. Finally, unable to help it one more moment, I asked, "May I help you?" As if somehow that was my job. As if she hadn't been the one knocking on my door. "I know your eyes." It was a whisper that made my stomach turn, even if I had no idea what she was talking about. I thought maybe it was her way of saying I looked familiar. "I'm sorry, I'm not from around these parts," I said, still trying to be polite. I nodded, trying to let her know that the conversation was over, and I looked to close the door, but her foot was holding it open. It was eyes like yours that brought her here. Something about the way she was standing there, about her voice, about whatever it was that she was accusing me of, made an anger bloom in my chest, a feeling usually reserved for Mama. My hands started to shake, and so I rested one on my hip to steady myself. "I am sure I have no idea what you are talking about. Now, please," she interrupted me, stepping closer. You'll see, she said, eyes never leaving mine. The wind blew and I shivered fiercely. The honk of the horn made me jump, but there was Arthur pulling back into the lot. She didn't wait for him, bowing her head and skulking off. He made no mention of it, simply handing me a bag, saying he got us sandwiches for supper. It was our honeymoon, but we were not new to each other. So I suppose he felt no further inclination towards romance. I went into the bathroom to change into a silk dressing gown Aunt Grace had gotten me for this occasion. But when I walked out, he was already asleep and snoring. I lay in the bed next to him, trying with all my might to forget that woman, but I had breathed her in. She held tight in my mind. I tossed and turned until I gave up and went to get the magazine I brought for myself before we left home. It was only then that I saw something. Someone out of the corner of my eye. A shadow in the mirror, one that wasn't in the room. I turned back slowly, and there she was, a woman. Her hair, thin and rough, hung over down past her shoulders. Her lips were pulled tight, her eyes were sunken, the whites having turned the yellow that made me want to retch. Her dress hung loosely from her shoulders, making her look like a scarecrow. Her arms and legs were spindles, fingers bony, and I couldn't move when I saw her. Not at first. Her stare was like a spider web, and I was the fly. Fear choked me, and I struggled to breathe. Without warning, she began to pound on the glass, making it shake. A hairline formed in the corner, and when I saw it in the moonlight, terror pierced me. I shook myself loose and ran back into the bed. I tried to wake Arthur. I did. But he just turned over, mumbling something about nothing and pulling too much of the covers with him, leaving me with absolutely nothing between me and her but my eyelids. I shut them tight, but heard the pounding against the glass, distant, though, as if we were lifetimes apart. I huddled closer to Arthur, hoping that she wouldn't dare, not in his presence, but when the mirror began to crack, I knew there was nothing left to do but beg the morning to come. My eyes opened on instinct, really, but then they were impossible to close. She stood above me, reaching her hand out to my face. Her caress was surprisingly gentle until her nail pressed against my skin, razor sharp. I could feel the blood drip down my cheek. I tried to sit up, to run, but her hand moved to my neck, binding me in place. My eyes burned with tears, and all she offered was a laugh. Her breath was sour, and her teeth were gone. She spoke in a low rasp that gave me goosebumps. The roots must be torn, she said, her grip loosening, or there is no escape. But you know that, don't you? Her laugh shook the bed and the world and everything ever. She traced her nail down my chest, and then it was over. Nothing was all that was left. Arthur woke to a broken mirror and a bloody bride. He chastised my clumsiness and blamed it all on sleepwalking. I put on a smile like Mama taught me and agreed with him wholeheartedly, doing my best to hide the cut with makeup. I ran to the car, leaving him to load the trunk and check out, not wanting to see that woman ever again. I was relieved when I looked in the side mirror and there was nothing to be seen but Arthur walking back to the car. I turned to smile at him, and through the big bay window of the lobby I could see them both. But only one waved goodbye. Mirrors kind of freak me out. One of my biggest fears is seeing someone standing next to me when I look into the mirror, someone who obviously isn't in the room. That's true of any reflective surface, really. I've had recurrent nightmares of looking in the rearview mirror of my otherwise empty car to see someone in the back seat. So this one got to me. The night after I got this, I was home alone, of course. I woke up at about 3 a.m. needing some water. My bedroom door opens right into the living room and lines up perfectly with a framed poster. Sometimes when it's totally dark in my room, I catch my reflection in the glass of the frame, and I used to make myself jump all the time. I've been here long enough that it no longer startles me, but I, of course, still see my reflection. That night, though, I went to get water, no issue. But when I came back and turned towards the door as I got back into bed, I swore for a second that I saw something that didn't look like me, didn't look like my silhouette in the glass. It happened so fast, and I didn't have my glasses on, so I'm sure this is all in my head, but for a second it seemed like someone was standing next to me, and our reflections blended together. I turned on that light so damn fast, but all I could see was me. There was nothing or no one in my house. I have an alarm, and it was on, and I did gather up the courage to search the house, and all was well. Once I got my heart rate back to normal, I realized that nothing felt off. I've had enough odd experiences to know what it feels like in my body, in the room. I did what I know how to do in terms of clearing a space quickly, just in case, and then went back to sleep. Like I said, I didn't have my glasses on, and I was groggy from the 3 a.m. of it all, but it was unsettling, nevertheless. Okay, that's what I've got for you this week. As always, if you have any questions or theories about what's going on, I would love to hear them. You can email me at joanna@theaccursed.com. Until next time, bye. The Accursed is written, created, and all around conjured by me, Anna Dane. You can find out more about the show at theaccursed.com or on Instagram at The Accursed Podcast. You can find out more about me at joannadane.com. The intro and outro song, Cathedral, is provided by Moby Gratis. Want an extra bonus story? Sign up for our mailing list at theaccursed.com, and one will be delivered right to your inbox. If you like the show, there are 2 ways you could help us out. First, please consider leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you happen to listen. Second, share us with other folks in your world who might also love a ghost story. Thanks for listening. Bye.